Our first look at police dash cam as the first officer arrives at a Canton home early that snowy morning.
When I arrived, I saw Miss Reed looked like she was giving CPR to him, and she had blood on her face.
Officer Stephen Seraph says he saw a man face up in the snow, later identified as John O'Keefe. Karen Reed and two other women were huddled over him. Seconds later, dash cam video shows jurors a frantic Reed running back and forth in front of the police cruiser.
Miss Reed was visibly upset. She kept saying, this is all my fault. This is my fault. I did this. And she was very hysterical.
Seraph says O'Keefe had no pulse and was cold to the touch. But how he died differs greatly according to the prosecution and defense.
The relationship's up.
Prosecutors say Reed and O'Keefe were having problems. WCVB animation shows how prosecutors say Reed and O'Keefe arrived in her Lexus SUV at that house in Canton for an after-hours party, but then she left without him. The next morning, O'Keefe's body was found lying in a snowbank near a fire hydrant in the front corner of the yard. Prosecutors say as Reed drove away, she slammed her SUV into O'Keefe, going more than 24 miles an hour, leaving him for dead in a blizzard. Reed's defense insists O'Keefe went inside the house, where he was killed during a fight and a dog attack.
Her car never struck John O'Keefe. She did not cause his death. And that means that somebody else.
It was just after midnight in Canton, Massachusetts, when a Boston police officer vanished into the cold darkness outside a colleague's home. Hours later, his lifeless body was discovered in the snow, leaving a community stunned and a family shattered. John O'Keefe was more than a cop. He was a guardian, a father figure, and a friend to many. But on that January night, everything changed in an instant. The official story pointed to a tragic accident, but whispers of betrayal and cover-up quickly spread. Was this the result of a heated argument gone wrong, or was there a hidden agenda among those who were supposed to protect and serve? The woman at the center of the storm, Karen Reed, claimed innocence, but the evidence against her was mounting, and the questions kept piling up. Tonight, we're pulling back the curtain on a case that has gripped Boston and beyond. A respected officer, a mysterious death, and a courtroom battle that has left the public divided. As you watch, ask yourself, who can you trust when those sworn to uphold the law become suspects themselves? Have you ever seen a case in your city that left everyone questioning the truth? Let us know in the comments, and stay with us as we follow every twist in the story of John O'Keefe. Subscribe for more true crime stories and let us know your theories in the comments below. John O'Keefe III was born on December 8, 1975, in Braintree, Massachusetts. Raised in a close-knit community, he grew up surrounded by family and friends who would later describe him as loyal, selfless, and deeply committed to those he loved. From an early age, John stood out, not for seeking attention, but for his quiet strength and willingness to help others. He graduated from Braintree High School, then went on to Northeastern University, where he earned his undergraduate degree. His dedication to public service didn't stop there. He later completed a master's degree in criminal justice at the University of Massachusetts Lowell, a testament to his drive and sense of duty. In 2005, John joined the Boston Police Department, beginning a career that would span 16 years. He worked in several districts, including 18 and C11, and served in the SORI unit. Colleagues remember him as someone who could be counted on in any situation, steady, compassionate, and always willing to lend a hand. He earned multiple commendations, but for John, the job was never about recognition. It was about making a difference, both in the department and in the neighborhoods he served. John's sense of responsibility extended far beyond his badge. When tragedy struck his family, first losing his sister, then her husband within months, he didn't hesitate. He stepped in to raise his young niece and nephew, becoming their guardian and primary caregiver. At just 6 and 3 years old, these children needed stability, and John provided it without question. Friends say he embraced this new role with the same dedication he brought to his work, putting their needs above his own. His compassion reached even further. When his best friend and fellow officer, Pat Rogers, died by suicide, John supported Rogers' pregnant girlfriend, Laura Sullivan. He became godfather to her son and was present for the child's birth, offering comfort and guidance during an unimaginably difficult time. Laura would later testify that John was a constant presence, someone she and her son could always rely on. John O'Keefe was more than a police officer. He was a protector, a mentor, and a pillar for those around him. His life was defined by service, sacrifice, and an unwavering commitment to family and community. As the events of that fateful night began to unfold, it was this legacy that made his loss so devastating, and the search for answers all the more urgent. Have you ever known someone who always put others first, no matter the cost? Share your stories in the comments below. On the evening of January 28, 2022, John O'Keefe's life took a turn that no one could have predicted. The night began with plans that seemed ordinary, a gathering at the home of Brian Albert, a fellow Boston police officer, in Canton, Massachusetts. The house was familiar territory for John, a place where colleagues and friends often came together to unwind and share stories away from the pressures of the job. John wasn't alone that night. He was accompanied by Karen Red, his girlfriend since 2020. Karen was a financial analyst and adjunct professor, known for her intelligence and strong academic background. Their relationship, at least to those on the outside, appeared stable. But as with many relationships, there were layers that only those closest to them could see. The couple arrived at the Albert residence late in the evening. The house was already buzzing with activity, laughter, music, and the easy camaraderie that comes when people who share a difficult profession find a moment to relax. John was among friends and colleagues, people he trusted. Karen, though not as close to the group, was present, and the two mingled with the other guests. As the night wore on, the atmosphere shifted. Accounts from that evening would later become a point of contention, with details disputed and memories questioned. What is clear is that at some point, John and Karen left the party together, only for John to return to the house alone. The reasons for this are still debated, with some suggesting a disagreement between the couple, while others insist it was a simple misunderstanding. Karen would later tell investigators that she dropped John off outside the Albert home in the early hours of January 29th. She claimed he wanted to go back inside, and she drove away, expecting him to spend the night with friends. What happened after that moment remains at the heart of the case. Did John make it back inside? Did he encounter someone outside? Or did something else entirely take place in those crucial minutes? The timeline from that point forward is murky. Phone records, witness statements, and physical evidence would all be scrutinized, but no single account could answer every question. What is certain is that by 2:30 a.m., John O'Keefe was lying in the snow outside the Albert residence, unseen and unaided. The events of that night would soon become the focus of intense investigation and public speculation. Friends and family would be left to wonder how a night that began with laughter and friendship could end in tragedy. The uncertainty, the shifting stories, and the unanswered questions would fuel a storm of suspicion and debate that continues to this day. As you listen to these details, ask yourself, how often do the smallest decisions and misunderstandings change the course of a life forever? Let us know your thoughts in the comment. The morning of January 29, 2022, began with a sense of dread that would soon grip everyone connected to John O'Keefe. As the first light crept over Canton, Karen Reed was already searching for answers. She hadn't heard from John since dropping him off outside Brian Albert's house hours earlier. Her calls had gone unanswered, and worry was quickly turning into panic. Unable to shake the feeling that something was wrong, Karen returned to the Albert residence. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of stillness that makes every sound seem louder. As she pulled up, her eyes scanned the snow-covered yard. That's when she saw him, John, lying motionless in the cold, just steps from the house where friends had gathered the night before.
Miss Reed looked like she was giving CPR to him, and she had blood on her face.
Karen rushed to his side, her voice breaking as she called 911. The urgency in her words was unmistakable. Emergency responders arrived quickly, but it was already too late. John O'Keefe was gone. The scene was chaotic, flashing lights, hurried footsteps, and the stunned silence of disbelief. For those who knew John, the news spread fast and hit hard. A man who had spent his life protecting others was now the victim of a tragedy no one could explain. The initial investigation began immediately. Officers cordoned off the area, searching for any clue that might explain how John ended up outside, exposed to the elements, with no one to help him. The questions came fast. Had he fallen? Was there a struggle? Did anyone inside the house know what had happened? The answers were not forthcoming. Family members arrived, their faces etched with shock and grief. John's brother, Paul, struggled to process the loss, his emotions raw as he tried to comfort the children John had raised as his own. Friends and colleagues gathered, some in uniform, others in plain clothes, all united by a sense of disbelief and sorrow. The community, too, felt the impact. John O'Keefe was not just another name in the news, he was a familiar face, a neighbor, a friend. Parents who had seen him at school events, residents who had watched him patrol their streets, and those who had benefited from his quiet acts of kindness all mourned together. The loss was personal, and the questions only deepened the pain. As investigators worked the scene, rumors began to circulate. Some whispered about an accident, others about a possible altercation. The lack of clear answers left room for speculation, and soon, the story was no longer just about a fallen officer, it was about the mystery surrounding his final hours. In the days that followed, the search for truth would become relentless. But on that morning, all anyone could do was grieve, and wonder how a night of friendship had ended in such heartbreak.
O'Keefe had no pulse and was cold to the touch, but how he died differs greatly according to the prosecution and defense.
The relationship's up.
Prosecutors say Reed and O'Keefe were having problems. WCVB animation shows how prosecutors say Reed and O'Keefe arrived in her Lexus SUV at that house in Canton for an after-hours party, but then she left without him. The next morning, O'Keefe's body was found lying in a snowbank near a fire hydrant in the front corner of the yard. Prosecutors say as Reed drove away, she slammed her SUV into O'Keefe, going more than 24 miles an hour, leaving him for dead in a blizzard. Reed's defense insists O'Keefe went inside the house, where he was killed during a fight and a dog attack.
Her car never struck John O'Keefe. She did not cause his death. And that means that somebody else did.
Outside the courthouse, Reed's loyal supporters continued to defend her.
She did not kill John O'Keefe, and the evidence is going to show that she was framed.
Any one of us could be Karen Reed. It's that simple.
The case that has divided Canton, now about to play out in front of a national audience.
The investigation into John O'Keefe's death began with urgency and confusion. From the start, the facts were tangled and the stakes were high. The Canton police, joined by state investigators, faced a case that would soon divide not just a community, but the entire region. Authorities quickly focused on Karen Reed, the last person known to have seen John alive. She was questioned about the events of that night, her relationship with John, and her actions after leaving the Albert residence. According to the prosecution, the evidence pointed to a violent confrontation between the couple. They alleged that after an argument, Karen struck John with her SUV, leaving him outside in the freezing cold before driving away. The charges were severe: second-degree murder, manslaughter, motor vehicle homicide, and leaving the scene of a deadly crash. Prosecutors built their case on several key points. First, they cited physical evidence from the scene, including damage to Karen's vehicle and injuries on John's body that, in their view, matched being struck by a car. Witnesses described Karen's frantic behavior in the hours after John's disappearance, including her repeated calls and messages. Forensic analysis became a central focus, with experts examining tire marks, blood patterns, and the timeline of phone activity. The prosecution argued that Karen's actions were not those of an innocent person, but of someone trying to cover up a terrible mistake. But the defense saw things very differently. From the beginning, Karen's legal team insisted she was being framed. They argued that John never made it back inside the house after Karen dropped him off. Instead, they claimed he was attacked by others inside the Albert home, possibly during a confrontation that turned violent. According to this version, John's injuries were not consistent with being hit by a car, but with a physical assault.
Her car never struck John O'Keefe. She did not cause his death. And that means that somebody else did.
The defense pointed to the presence of multiple police officers at the party, suggesting that their influence could have shaped the investigation from the outset. This theory gained traction as more details emerged. The defense highlighted inconsistencies in witness statements and questioned why certain evidence was collected or ignored. They raised concerns about the handling of the crime scene, the speed with which Karen became the primary suspect, and the possibility that key facts were overlooked or intentionally suppressed. The idea that law enforcement could be protecting its own, or even manipulating the investigation, became a central theme in the courtroom and in the media. The case was further complicated by the involvement of outside voices. Blogger Aidan Kearney, known for his outspoken commentary, became a vocal supporter of Karen Reid. He published articles and videos challenging the official narrative, accusing police and prosecutors of misconduct.
You've seen the discovery. There aren't any messages between Karen Reid and me that were entered into the discovery, and they have both of our phones because there's nothing there. It's a wild, fishing expedition, and they have all of our messages, and Karen Reid and me never conspired to intimidate witnesses, so it's pretty boring what's in our phone.
Kearney's involvement led to his own legal troubles, with a 20-count indictment related to witness intimidation and harassment. The trial became not just a search for truth, but a battleground for competing stories, each with its own supporters and detractors. As the investigation unfolded, the public watched closely. Every new detail was dissected on social media, in news reports, and in conversations across Massachusetts. The mistrial in July 2024, caused by a hung jury, only deepened the sense of uncertainty. For some, it was proof that reasonable doubt remained. For others, it was a sign that the truth might never be fully known. Throughout the process, the emotional toll on John's family and friends was immense. His brother Paul, who testified during the trial, struggled to speak about the loss. The children John had raised were left without their guardian, and the community that had once looked to him for protection now found itself searching for answers. The investigation into John O'Keefe's death became more than a question of guilt or innocence. It exposed the challenges of seeking justice when those involved are part of the same system meant to uphold it. The conflicting narratives, the allegations of misconduct, and the relentless scrutiny all combined to create a case that was as complex as it was heartbreaking. If you were sitting in the jury box, hearing these two versions of events, which would you believe? Share your thoughts in the comments below.
Out of the Karen Reid retrial, a key witness testified yesterday that she heard Reid say, "I hit him," after finding her boyfriend dead in the snow. Chief National Correspondent Matt Gutman is tracking this case. Good morning, Matt.
Hey, good morning, George. And that witness says she heard Reid repeat that phrase, "I hit him," multiple times that morning. And for the prosecution, it's pivotal testimony because they say it shows an admission of guilt by Karen Reid. But that witness, whose name is Jen McCabe, was grilled by Reid's team, who says she's an unreliable witness and her story keeps changing.
This morning, star witness Jennifer McCabe back on the stand, this time facing ferocious cross-examination from Karen Reid's defense team. Reid is accused of purposely hitting her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe, with her SUV after a night of heavy drinking back in 2022. McCabe testifying that once Reid realized O'Keefe never made it home that night, her behavior became hysterical. So in a blinding blizzard, McCabe, Reid, and another one of O'Keefe's friends set out to search for him and finding his unconscious body buried in the snow.
Did you hear or do you remember the defendant saying anything to the first responder?
Yes.
What did she say?
She told the first responder, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him."
The defense drilling McCabe on that statement.
Your memory's getting better even as we sit here today, correct?
There are certain things I will never forget, Mr. Jackson.
Including the fact that you never, ever, ever said, she said the words "I hit him" to a grand jury when you were asked about it 3 months after the incident. Correct?
She said, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him."
Reid's attorneys pointing out that McCabe initially testified to the grand jury that a panicked Reid asked her if she could have hit O'Keefe. Here's what Reid told me about that in our interview in 2023.
And one of the things that Jen McCabe says that you said at the time when you found John's body, "I hope I didn't hit him. I hope I didn't hit him." And then the firefighter said that you said she heard you say, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him."
I said I hit him it was preceded by a did and proceeded by a question mark. So did I say the 3 words, I hit him? Yes. Did I hit him?
Earlier, prosecutors playing the 911 call McCabe made after finding O'Keefe. Reed can be heard screaming in the background. McCabe telling the jury she tried to comfort Reed as they waited in the back of a police cruiser.
We held hands, we prayed, and at that point, Miss Reed started yelling to Miss Roberts, go check on him. And at that point, myself and Miss Reed got out of the car, and she started yelling and pulling on me to Google hypothermia and Google how long it takes for somebody, to die in the cold.
And Karen Reed, stoic throughout her former friend's testimony, but she did have these words for reporters outside of court.
Inconsistencies, every statement's different. Under oath, not under oath, with the cops are all wrong. This is very similar to what we saw a year ago.
Why is she so inconsistent?
Because she's lying.
Clearly no love lost there. Now, McCabe has been the subject of threats and harassment by Reed's army of supporters in the Boston area. Today is a court holiday, but Jen McCabe will be back on the stand for a 3rd day of testimony on Friday once court resumes. Guys.
Many watching this case, Matt, as you know. Thank you.
The courtroom became the stage for a legal battle that captured the attention of not just Canton, but the entire country. As Karen Reed faced charges for the death of John O'Keefe, every detail of the case was scrutinized by the public and the press. The trial was marked by high tension, emotional testimony, and a constant undercurrent of doubt about whether the full truth would ever come to light. Testimony from both sides painted starkly different pictures. Prosecutors called witnesses who described Karen's actions and demeanor in the hours after John's death, emphasizing her distress and the evidence they believed pointed to her guilt. Forensic experts took the stand to explain the physical findings, while law enforcement officials defended the integrity of their investigation. The prosecution's narrative was clear. Karen Reed was responsible for John's death, and the evidence supported their charges. The defense, however, was relentless in challenging every point. They cross-examined witnesses, highlighting inconsistencies and raising questions about the reliability of the investigation. Their strategy focused on the possibility of a cover-up, suggesting that key evidence had been mishandled or ignored, and that the presence of multiple police officers at the party created a conflict of interest. The defense also brought forward their own experts, who disputed the prosecution's interpretation of the forensic evidence and argued that John's injuries could have resulted from a physical altercation inside the house.
After your autopsy and observations of Mr. O'Keefe's body, inevitably did you come to a conclusion about the manner and cause of Mr. O'Keefe's death? And I'll ask you first about the cause. To a reasonable degree of medical certainty, did you reach a conclusion about the cause of Mr. O'Keefe's death?
Yes. The cause of death was determined to be blunt impact injuries of head and hypothermia.
You mentioned 2 different things, blunt impact and hypothermia. Was
Correct.
there a primary cause of death in your opinion?
The blunt impact injuries of head.
Hypothermia, was that sufficient to be a primary cause of death, in your opinion?
In the absence of head trauma, hypothermia is a cause of death, but I'm not able to make that determination in this case because we do have the blunt impact injuries of head.
So if I understand, you are not saying to a reasonable degree of medical certainty that hypothermia was the cause of death?
Not the primary. It contributed, but the primary cause of death was blunt impact injuries of head.
Did you learn what...
Outside the courtroom, the case became a lightning rod for public debate. News outlets covered every development, and social media buzzed with theories, speculation, and heated arguments. The involvement of blogger Aidan Kearney, who was himself facing charges related to the case, added another layer of controversy. His posts and videos fueled public skepticism about the official story and amplified calls for transparency and accountability. The trial reached a dramatic turning point in July 2024, when the jury announced they could not reach a unanimous verdict. The result was a mistrial, leaving the case unresolved and the community divided. For some, the hung jury was a sign that the prosecution had failed to prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt. For others, it was a frustrating setback that left justice unfulfilled. Throughout the proceedings, the emotional weight on John O'Keefe's family was unmistakable. His brother Paul's testimony was marked by visible grief, and the children John had cared for were left with more questions than answers. The trial may have ended without a verdict, but the impact of the case continued to ripple through the community. As the dust settled, one thing was clear: the search for truth in John O'Keefe's death was far from over. The case had exposed deep divisions, raised difficult questions about trust and accountability, and left a lasting mark on everyone involved. If you've been following this case, do you think justice was served? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that matter. The loss of John O'Keefe sent shockwaves through his family, friends, and the wider community. For those closest to him, the pain was immediate and overwhelming. John had been more than a police officer; he was the anchor for his niece and nephew, stepping in as their guardian after the deaths of their parents. At just 6 and 3 years old, these children had already faced unimaginable loss, and John's steady presence had given them a sense of safety and belonging. Now, that sense of security was gone. John's brother Paul struggled to find words as he took the stand during the trial, his grief visible to everyone in the courtroom. He spoke not only of John's dedication to his family, but also of the excitement John felt just days before his death, when his niece was accepted to a private high school. These small moments, filled with hope and pride, were now memories that carried a heavy weight. The impact of John's death extended beyond his immediate family. Friends and colleagues in the Boston Police Department remembered him as someone who always put others first, a mentor who offered guidance and support without hesitation. Laura Sullivan, the girlfriend of John's late best friend Pat Rogers, described how John had been there for her and her son, never missing a milestone or a moment when they needed him most. His role as a godfather and a constant presence in their lives was a testament to his character. In the community, John's absence was deeply felt. Neighbors, parents, and those who had crossed paths with him in everyday life mourned the loss of a man who had quietly made a difference. The tragedy brought people together in shared sorrow, but it also left them searching for answers and justice. The human cost of this case is measured not just in headlines or courtroom drama, but in the lives forever changed by John O'Keefe's absence. If you've ever lost someone who meant everything to you, you understand the void that can never truly be filled. Share your thoughts or memories of those who made a difference in your life in the comments below. The story of John O'Keefe's life and death is more than a headline or a courtroom battle. It's a powerful reminder of the complexities that exist within families, relationships, and the systems meant to protect us. As the details of this case unfolded, it became clear that the impact reached far beyond a single night in Canton. The questions raised and the lessons learned are ones that resonate with anyone who has ever faced uncertainty, loss, or the search for truth. One of the most striking aspects of this case is how quickly trust can be tested, even among those who seem closest. John and Karen's relationship, like many, had its challenges that, in the aftermath, became the focus of intense scrutiny. This serves as a reminder that open communication and support are essential in any relationship, especially when emotions run high or circumstances become difficult. For viewers, it's a call to check in on loved ones, to listen, and to seek help when needed, before misunderstandings or conflicts escalate. The investigation into John's death also highlights the importance of transparency and accountability, particularly when law enforcement is involved. The controversy surrounding the handling of evidence, the presence of multiple officers at the party, and the allegations of bias all point to the need for independent oversight in cases where trust in the system is at stake. Ensuring that investigations are fair and impartial is crucial, not just for those directly involved, but for the community's faith in justice. This case also brings attention to the emotional burdens carried by first responders. John's willingness to step up for his family and friends, even in the face of personal tragedy, is a testament to the sacrifices made by those in public service. It's a reminder that support systems for officers and their families are vital, and that the pressures of the job can have lasting effects. Finally, the allegations of witness intimidation and harassment during the trial underscore the need for ethical conduct and protection for those who come forward. Justice depends on the courage of witnesses and the integrity of the process. As you reflect on John O'Keefe's story, consider what it means to stand up for others, to demand fairness, and to support those in need. What lessons do you take from this case? Share your thoughts below. And if you find value in stories that go beyond the headlines, subscribe for more true crime stories that matter. The case of John O'Keefe remains a haunting reminder of how quickly lives can change and how difficult it can be to find answers when trust is broken. Despite months of investigation, a high-profile trial, and endless debate, the truth about what happened that night in Canton is still out of reach. The questions left behind, about loyalty, justice, and the limits of the system, continue to echo through the lives of everyone touched by this tragedy. For John's family, friends, and the community he served, the search for closure goes on. The mistrial has left the case unresolved, and the possibility of new developments still lingers. As the story continues to unfold, one thing is certain: the impact of John O'Keefe's life and death will not be forgotten. If you want to follow more stories that challenge what you think you know, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. And if you have thoughts or theories about this case, share them in the comments below. Your voice matters, and together we can keep the conversation going as we seek truth and justice, one story at a time.